I'm Mike Kelly from Project Healing Waters Omaha, and tonight we have a special guest. We have with us Josh Varner from North Carolina. He's Special Forces First Sergeant, and at least for now, he'll be retiring soon, I guess. And he's uh, become a very quick expert on deer hair to the point where he is producing deer hair that rivals most of the stuff out there, and that comes from some pretty well known people that are amazed by his hair. So he's going to give us a rundown on what deer hair is all about, what makes it good, what makes it bad. He's tied hair flies and hair streamers for years, so he has that background. He's not just a deer hair guy; he's a fly tyer too. So he can give us a fly tyer's perspective on what's good and what's not, and what it's good for, and what he looks for when he grades his hair and dyes it and the process and all that. So it should be a pretty interesting show. So with that, Josh, I'll hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Yeah. Yeah. First off, guys, thanks for having me. Really a privilege to be out here. Get to talk a little bit on my passion and share it with you guys. This has been pretty much from the first elk hair caddis I spun when I was a kid, putting that first hair on and seeing the hair just flare like that. I was hooked to deer hair, like almost instantly. And from there, as my tying went on, getting into the big streamers, the belly hair on the deer popper, the stuff for the like your dungeons and your D&Ds and stuff like that, and it just expanded, and it got me into tying commercially. When I was tying commercially for the first couple of years, getting good hair wasn't really too tough, but then this is the piece that got me into it started getting really tough to get good deer hair, and this is the piece I've kept it this entire time that got me into this. Everybody knows them, the Primo strips. I had a big order for yellow dungeons, and so I ordered like 4 or 5 of these strips, and the majority of them came in like this. You can see you've got like maybe 1.25 inches, and this is from right down the center of the spine. Like I can tell it now after working with probably 400 or 500 hides I've processed so far. I can tell this is right down the center of the spine on mid-season deer. We'll get into some of that in a little bit. Yeah, this was the one that started it. And I was like, man, I know that I can do better than this. I know that I can produce a better product. Not knowing what in the hell actually went into it. 3 years later, I'm to a point now to where I am fairly confident. And I'm not bashful about saying it's the best hair on the market, in a wide variety of colors. I do got to give a big thank you, to Kelly Gallup. He was the one that backed me on this, and I said it in some of my videos. The first run of hair that I took down to him, he should have ran me out, or he should have laughed me out of the shop. It was really, really rough. Like it constricted on me. The dye sets were decent, but I really didn't have a clue what I was doing, and me being as stubborn as I am, once I set my mind to something, I'm just not gonna stop working until I figure it out. And now it's figured out, and out in the shop, there's probably 400 hides sitting out there, going through the tanning process and everything. And I do all my own tanning as well. So that first elk hair caddis, where I was amazed seeing that hair flare, has led to probably an unhealthy obsession at this point, but I'm too far into it right now to turn back. So what I want to do is just highlight a couple of things of what makes good hair, what makes hair easy to work with, stuff that let me backtrack just a little bit on that. Having good hair, just like having a good vise, won't automatically make you a good fly tyer. you need to put the time in, learn how to control your materials. Like the video we watched a couple of weeks back with Al when he was setting his wings and everything, just picking up little things from every. I still watch videos constantly, and I've been tying for I don't know 30 some years, however long it's been. I still watch videos and I still pick stuff up from people. You get so many different perspectives from other folks, and it really hones your tying in. But like I went back to, having good hair or a good vise or good material won't make you a good fly tyer. It helps, don't get me wrong, it helps, but you need to really perfect your craft. But we'll go through now, some of the differences in the deer hair. So what Al tied with the other week, it was that stuff right down that 6-inch section, right down the center of the back. That's what this is right here. This is X fine. If you look in Kelly's shop or Charlie's shop, they have it. That's how I market it. That's how I label it. This is X fine, and you can see the hair. It is just super thin. It's a very non-compressible hair, and it makes phenomenal tails, phenomenal tilt wings. If you want to do the upright and divided, it's very easy to work with. It's very easy to make a taper. When you connect the tail section and then your wing section, it's very easy to make a nice taper with this, and it won't flare all over the place on you, like your short fine. Here's the short fine right here. You can see just automatically how much more compressible that is. The fibers are a lot more hollow. And this is as you transition from the center section of the spine, that give or take 6 inches, you got those. And then as you transition down to the belly, that's where you start getting into this more compressible hair. And I really think that it is a biological thing. That's the hair that is more exposed to the elements. The closer that you get down to the belly, you got to figure a deer laying on the snow. Those hollow properties create an insulation. The more hollow something is, the more insulation there's going to be. So it's not that cold's not going to penetrate through the belly, and then as it gets up through the top, as you start getting to that spine doesn't need the absolute most hollow fiber. So I think that's kind of where that biological thing comes into play. And then also kind of made the analogy to a ridge vent on a roof. So all of your air goes up through your ridge vent, and that's how your house maintains or regulates temperature. It may be something like that. I need somebody smarter than me to actually confirm that theory. But it in my mind, that's how it kind of makes sense. And I think that's how you get into these X fine and the less hollow properties on the hair. Now, it's all going to vary from season to season. Like warm days, warmer climates like down here in North Carolina, you have probably that 6-inch section is a lot wider. Up in Montana, there's some hides that I have out there from Montana that spine section is razor thin just because it's so much colder up there. Now, what time of the year the deer is taken is going to have an effect on that. Something late September is going to be a lot more, a lot closer to the X or this piece right here than what, and the season just ended right around Thanksgiving in Montana. So, you had sustained days of lows in the single digits, highs maybe 30 if you're lucky that time of year. You're going to have a lot more hollow properties even on that spine section. So that kind of highlights the difference in the short fine. And I couldn't tell you or not if this was the same deer. Probably not, because this one's an ash color. But you will get the same length of hair. The center section tends to be a little bit longer than, transitioning down to your belly. But we'll go through some of the short fine, and then all of the short fine I have in the same colors in the X as well. So this is your natural, and then this is an ash. For a comparison, here's a bleach, and the light that I have in front of here is kicking a lot of light off of that, but it's almost a pure white. And then from there, this is another bleach, but the tips are a little bit more pronounced. This is probably a little further away from the belly. And then this is a ginger bleach. I'll compare it with the ash. It has a more of like a sulfurish color. It'd be a phenomenal body for any of your PMDs, sulfurs, anything like that. It's just a little bit different than what the regular bleach is. And like I said, like if you're doing like a found link or anything like that, it would be a phenomenal body for that. And then also in the short fine world, this is a piece that just won't be sold. It's just, there's too many cowlicks and everything in it. You probably can't see it because of the reflection, but this is a pure white piece of short fine hair. It can almost completely replace the need for calf body hair. All of your Z-lawns. It makes beautiful posts, upright divided. However you want to work it, this stuff is absolutely phenomenal.
So Josh, where does that white short hair come from? Is that belly hair as well, or where does that white stuff come from?
Yep, that's the belly. Yep, that's the belly on the Carolina deer down here. And then there's a couple in Montana, depending on, like I said, what time of year it was taken and everything. But yeah, this is pure short fine hair. And it's I was trimming a couple up last year, and I was looking at it and I was like, oh my goodness, that looks like it's short fine. I was expecting it to be a lot more wiry. And I went over and I put it on the hook, and sure enough, it flared just absolutely perfect. So I
Now,
said a couple pieces.
I have one other question. I don't want to get too far ahead of what you're going to say, but with those three colors that you were showing, the blonde, the ash, and that kind of a gingery color, are those all different dye sets or bleach amounts, or is that the way it comes off of a hide because you have the different colors or whatever?
Yeah, so two of them are different dye set, or two of them are different floats. Yeah, the ash and the ash is a separate one. The ginger bleach and the bleach come out pretty much of the same one, but the bleach more times than not is as you get closer to the belly, you'll get that pure bleach. And then depending on how much product I use, I have certain ratios out there that I tinker with. I can get closer to that ginger color if I want to get more of those, or I can get, closer to the bleach further up toward the spine, just depending on what I'm after for that certain hide. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on from the short fine stuff. So all of the short fine is to the color break. Let me find the natural here. So to the color break, right here up to the black is between 1/2 inch and 1 inch and 1/8. I moved it up last year an extra 1/8 of an inch, just as long as the hair is actually a fine hair. If it starts getting a lot of hollow properties to it, where it's really going to flare on you, it's going to act more like, a spinning hair, I'll kick that up to the mid-grade or the mid-season hair, which is between that inch and 1/8, all the way up to 1.5 inches. That's your mid-season. That's like your stimmy stuff. All of your, hoppers. It's still great for smaller streamers, your mini dungeons, your maybe zoo cougars, maybe your muddler minnows for certain. It'll make a phenomenal muddler, and that's in just a ton of different colors. I think I'm somewhere up around 20 different colors at this point. And this comes in 2 grades. So I grade every piece of I call it the big bug hair. There's your mid and your late season big bug. So I have it in 2 grades. This is a grade 1. You can see the tip alignment is just absolutely perfect. the tips are short. There's like 6 or 7 different things that I look at when I'm grading the hair. And then it's stamped on the back. You can't, doesn't really show up too well there. But I have it stamped with the logo there, and then it's stamped whether it's a 1 or a 2. This one is a 2. You can see some of the cowlicks and everything that's starting moving through this. The tip alignment, not really that good. It has nice short tips, but there's a lot of cowlicks in this. And I started to get some data on why there's so many cowlicks, as long as it's not something I mess up in my process. And Scott, the butcher that I use up here just north of me, he has to log all of his stuff, and so I can go in there and I can see what time of the day a deer was shot. And it's gotten to the point this year when I was picking hides up, I could look at it and I could tell you almost what time of day the deer was shot. If it was a warm day, you start getting into those cowlicks and everything. If it was a chilly morning that day, the deer was taken in the morning, you have stuff that looks more like this. And, I think that's another biological response to where, it's the deer's mechanism of cooling itself. If it's a hot day and it's already into this mid-season hair, say in mid-November here, and you have a day that's 80 degrees, what's that hair going to do? It's going to move off to the side, just like you kick the covers off in the middle of the night if it's warm, It's that hair's going to move itself away. And I think that's where you get into the cowlicks. I still have more data to collect on that to prove that theory right, but it's something interesting for me to kind of take a look at and see, and I can almost gauge then, what kind of hides I'm going to be picking up depending on the temperature and when the deer was shot and everything. This is another mid-season. This is a grade 2. This is a copper. Really cool color. It's not quite a brown. The tip colors, like I said before, depending on where it is on the cross section of the hide, you get such a wide variety of tips. And like I said, everything's completely tanned. Nice flexible hides. I fought that for the longest time. I would get a lot of constriction on hides. That was something I fought for quite some time. And then had a couple of breakthroughs. Still running into a couple of issues here and there, depending on how the hide's broken. There's so many variables that go into it. I could write a book, but I don't have the damn time to do that for sure.
Another quick question.
Yes, sir.
It seems like to me that most of the body hair is in pretty regular strips. Very few of them are as tanned, looks like, to the quality of what you have there. But a lot of the stuff that you buy in fly shops, the body strips, the primo strips, the 4x8s and the 3x4s, they're all like fairly well tanned and everything. But usually when you get into the belly hair, it's all hard and twisted. Right. And is that a reason with like thickness of the skin or fat, or what's the reason that belly hair is usually crooked and twisted and the rest of it's nice rectangles?
So I don't know if they actually tan the belly hair. If they're tanning them, I have a feeling that they are. Some of it's probably rawhide. It probably is, or probably just salt or borax dried. And with that, it's not going to sustain temperatures in the dye bath. Once it gets to a certain temperature, that hide's just going to constrict, and there's no getting it back. Once those collagen fibers break down and that bond's broken between whatever oil you're using, it's never coming back. Like you can stretch it as much as you want. The second that moisture is out of the hide, it's hard as a rock. It really is. Here's some of the belly hair. I just got 2 pieces that I've been doing. And it was about 2 years ago. I was like, well, if I can get probably about 2 years ago. I was like, well, if I can get my body hair to be flexible and pliable, why can't I get the belly hair to do it? So then I started working with that, and that's where this came from. Here it is. There's the stamped belly hair. You can see that it's flexible and pliable. The hair on it's nice and straight. And like you said, Mike, it's not where like you see the stuff in the shops and it's just all twisted up and mangled. Makes it a lot easier to work with. It really does. The belly hair is still something that is very difficult to put into a category or a size category, like a 3x4 or something like that, just because of how folks skin deer. Like everybody skins them different. If you go right up the center and the deer was field dressed, you're going to have a little bit easier of a time. But then every deer is different. Like some deer, mainly your mature bucks, they're going to have a lot wider strip of belly hair compared to your doe. Sometimes are a little bit thinner. So I struggled to get something into a size category. So I just decided to get them as close as I could to a 2.5x3, whichever direction it's going. And then in the belly hair world too, there's a lot of stuff out there that should not be packaged up. Your belly hair, you want that to be the most compressible hair, the most hollow hair out of all of the stuff that you can get. And some of it, like as you start getting into the lower abdomen, starts getting really thin. There's a beautiful strip of white hair on the rump side. It's white hair, but it's not belly. It is not compressible. It's closer to a tail material, to where it's just a non-hollow fiber and it's not going to flare like your belly hair will. I know when I was doing a lot of bass poppers, and I was ordering a lot of belly hair, I would get some stuff in, and I always called it nutsack hair because that's exactly the section of the deer that it comes from. It's down by that lower abdomen, and you can, I don't care if you have 200 denier GSP, you can pull on that with everything that you have and it will not flare for you at all. So I made that a point when I started selecting my belly hair, and you can see it too. Like when you're cutting these up, like you flip the belly over, like you can watch that transition of good hair, good hair, good hair, and then it just stops. Like it's a very clean break. So I always tell everybody, just because it's white does not make it belly hair. You really got to go through, sort it and select it and make sure that you're getting the absolute right stuff. When you're in the shops, take stuff out of the packages, take stuff out, look at it, make sure that you're getting the right stuff. That is until I'm able to scale this up, 100%, and then you can just buy it, from Charlie and Kelly and know exactly what you're getting. Shameless little plug there for those two.
So Josh, let me ask you, what is it I'm looking for when I go in to buy a piece of deer hair? I mean,
on the belly hair, or like just any regular?
Well, let's say I want to spin it. I want to spin deer hair.
Okay.
What should I look for?
Yeah, absolutely. So here is the two late season pieces that I picked up out of the shop. Here is, I got a bleached and then just an olive. This one, the olive's a 2, the bleached is a 1. And once again, marked on the back, you can probably see it a little bit better on the olive. So what you're looking for when you're wanting to spin deer hair, you're wanting, if it's something like you're wanting to tie a bunch of dungeons, okay, you're wanting at least 1.5 inches in hair length, at least 1.5 inches. Let me take the olive. It'll probably show up a little bit better on the camera. So at least 1.5 inches. And then you want nice hollow properties on that. If you can, I'll hold that in as close as I can there. You can see there's almost like a little wave in there. A little wave in that body hair is going to tell you that it was taken during a colder time. And that wave is going to also tell you that there is more hollow properties to that. When you start getting into your straighter hair, like this piece here, that straighter hair, it's not going to have the compressibility to it. Another thing that you want to look for is your tip alignment. Nice straight tips. It makes them easier to work with. Not that you can't tie with, there's a cowlick up on the very top, right up here. That hair's kind of going to the right a little bit. It's not that you can't tie with a cowlick. It just makes it so much easier when everything's nice and straight. Another thing that I look for is a nice clean break on that color break. So this section highlights it pretty well. That tells you it's a pretty uniform piece of hair, and it was most likely taken from somewhere between the belly and the spine section. There's typically probably 4 or 5 pieces from a cross section on a deer that will give you that really nice clean break. And those are typically your grade 1s. Those are typically your 1s. Another thing that you want to look for is the length of the tip. This olive has a little bit longer of a tip length than this bleach does. The bleach tip length is a lot shorter. It's not so much a big deal. Like I said, if you're tying like a dungeon with a 1/0 front or a 1/0 front hook, that, a little bit of extra tip length isn't going to make a big difference. But if you're tying a single side or a single hooked zoo cougar, for example, that little bit of extra tip length is going to take you away from the compressible hair that you have further down here. So you want to find something with a little bit shorter of a tip for that. Not really a huge difference, because still when you do your collar on a cougar, it's going to wind up being, probably 1/2 inch long or somewhere about that. So it's not going to make a huge difference, but it's something for me, like for the uniformity of it as well. Like when that say it's a muddler, when that collar is going the whole way around, you have that clean black break right there. And if you have shorter tip lengths, it's just going to look cleaner. Not that it means a thing to the fish at all. To the fly tyers, we're the pickiest people on the planet. So having that uniformity, when you look at a fly in your box that was tied with, something with short tips compared to long tips, you're going to gravitate to that short one and every single time. So if you have the time when you're in the shops, it makes sense to just go ahead and grab the best hair that you can get. That's assuming that everybody's as picky as me when it comes to picking out their flies and everything. I don't know. Like I know when I open my own fly box, like if I have 6 to choose from, the one that has the cleanest tie, that's the one that's going on. I fish it with more confidence. I'm paying more attention on the jerk strips, everything. So it's one of those things to where I don't know. I don't know. Probably just goofy, I guess. But one of those things that I gravitate toward the cleaner flies for sure.
Well, I always talk about, classes and everything else, talk about trying to strive for perfection when you're tying. Sure, you hear a lot of tyers, if something starts to go wrong, they say, well, the fish doesn't care. But, and it is true in a way. And a crippled minnow or a crippled insect is going to get more attention because the fish knows it's not going to be able to fly away very easily.
Absolutely.
So your cripples and your emergers and stuff like that are going to be more of a trout's diet or whatever. They're going to be, but if you're picking a fly out of the fly box, you're going to go for the nicest looking one and you're going to use it. And when you start getting down toward the ugly one, you're going to say, I got to tie some more. And so you're really going to use those. So if you strive for perfection, then for one thing, it's always going to make you a better tire. But also, if you just say, well, that's good enough, and you put it in your box, you're probably not going to use it very often, unless you just have a few. And then
you may as well just strip it down and repurpose the hook, because it'll sit in the box forever. And like you said, Mike, you'll get down to the last 1 or 2 of them. It's like, nah. And it stays in there for years.
When I first started tying, it's been 50 years ago now. I would have laughed at what you just said, that you'll never use those bad ones. But now, as I've gotten older and started learning a little bit more about tying, I've noticed myself doing just exactly that. I
Yep.
don't touch those ugly flies, and I go with the ones that look good. So,
Yep,
yeah.
absolutely.
And Josh,
Absolutely, yeah.
I've got a question real quick, if you don't
go
mind.
ahead.
Here in Missouri, the deer is infested with parasites, ticks.
Mhm.
Does that interfere with the quality of the hair that you harvest?
No, not at all. There's ticks all through them in Carolina, all through them in Montana. No, it doesn't interfere. The first thing that I do as soon as I get my hides, they go right in the freezer. Kills all the ticks off. That, and it preserves the hair too. Like if you don't get to if you don't get to a hide on a warm couple of days, you're going to start having hair slippage. And then, the hide's pretty much going to be ruined. The best advice I could give if you're looking to, to process your own, is just as soon as you can get it back to the house, throw it in a bag, put it in the freezer, and it can stay in the freezer for almost indefinite, really. But then, once you thaw it and then you start going through the fleshing process and everything, that's when the clock starts ticking to where you want to make sure that it gets preserved.
Josh, we've
Yeah.
gotten a lot of donated deer hair from taxidermists. And like you said, it's hard as a rock. But
Yeah.
it's still pretty flat, and it might be good for some of my beginning fly tires. How would you suggest the best way to cut that stuff is? I mean, I've tried everything except a table saw to get through it. So
Yeah. So probably what it was the taxidermist did a wet tan, or they rehydrated a dry tan, and the trimmings, once they're done with the trimmings, they're just throwing it in a bag and then they'll donate it to you guys. What I would suggest doing with it, to cut it, would be to just rehydrate it. Take depending on how big the piece is, you can take a 5-gallon bucket, put a little bit of salt in there. That'll lessen the chance of the hide swelling. Rehydrate it for about 2 hours, and then you'll be able to cut it with just an X-Acto or whatever it is. It'll cut really easy for you.
oh, cool. Thank you very much.
And
Yeah,
then what
absolutely.
would be the best way to dry that then after you do that rehydration process? Because you don't want to put it away with any kind of moisture in it that's going to cause issues, right?
Right. So once it's tanned, you really don't have an issue with it decaying or anything like that. You can put moisture back into it. Don't use hot water, because hot water will probably constrict it, depending on what the tanning mechanism or the tanning chemical was. But if you just use regular, room temperature or even cool water, I'd probably use cool water. They'll rehydrate for you fine. And then if you really want to, you can get some tanning oil, and as it's drying, it'll have like that kind of like it'll go from a slick feel on the hide to where it's almost a little tacky. You can put some oil on there and then fold it skin to skin, and then let it fold it skin to skin. You can let it go like that for a day. They call it sweating the hide, and that'll take up that oil, and then you can stretch it manually, called breaking the hide as it's drying. It takes a little bit of time, but you'll probably wind up with a lot softer of a piece of hair that you're working with, or softer piece of a hide. And if you want, like if it's a section something like this, that's fairly easy to break. As it's drying, you'll just stretch it like this a little bit, and you can take it like right over the edge of the table and just go right like that, and it'll soften up for you. It'll stay pretty soft.
Thank you. I've been struggling with that for over a year.
Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem. Yeah, definitely good to repurpose that stuff, from like the taxidermists, especially if they're throwing it away, and for what you guys are doing when you're teaching classes or anything like that. It's awesome to have hair to just pass out to folks, and stuff that they're able to work with. And yeah, that's definitely a good thing to be able to repurpose that.
If
Josh,
we can go
this is
back, if we can go back to John's question for just another minute, he was saying, if I want to spin deer hair, what do I want to look for in the fly shop? You were talking about the late season hair because it's hollow and everything, but
Mhm.
if he was doing colorful bass bugs or something like that, he might want belly hair instead then, right?
Yeah, for sure. Bass
And
bugs, you
then,
want the belly hair. Yep.
and
It'll
then,
even like, oh, there's Sydney. Even
yeah,
like Tommy Lynch's Drunken Disorderlies, I prefer the belly hair over body hair. It just compacts so much better. It's a lot cleaner of a head, in my opinion. Thanks, bud.
and then when somebody's looking at a piece of belly hair in the fly shop, not that we have any fly shops here in Omaha other than Cabela's, Bass Pro, and that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
if we were to be in a fly shop looking at a piece of belly hair, then just real quick, what's a couple of attributes that we're going to be looking for to tell if it's really going to be good quality stuff that we want? Or I think you were already basically covering that is if it's kind of thin and wiry and doesn't look like it's very hollow, then you probably
Right,
pass on it.
right.
And if it's nice and thick and maybe crinkly, and then
Yep. And then
that's what you want.
another thing that you can do, take it out of the package and you can hear it. Like you can almost hear, like when you move your hand over it, it'll have like a little uh I can't think of the adjective that I need to use for that right now, but you can hear it. Like as opposed to, let me grab this belly hair right here up at the top. That's closer to that lower abdomen. When you run your finger over it, it's almost silent. You'll hear like a little crinkle when you go over a good quality belly hair. That too, and like you can look at like the like those waves that I was talking about before. You can look for those waves in that belly hair too. They'll be pretty pronounced on the belly, just because, like I said, of its proximity to the cooler environment.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Sure. One of the other things, or one of the unique things about some of the hair that I'm dyeing is this right here. You can see the tips on this. The stem, the body section of the hair is black, but the tips on this have like a peacock color to it. It's a super sexy color. When I first started doing this, I was going for black, and I got that, and I sent a picture of it to Kelly, and he was like, "Keep it." He goes, "That's phenomenal." I was like, I was pissed. I was like, "Man, I messed this piece of hair up. It's just garbage." Kelly saw it, and he was like, "Keep it. That's phenomenal." So that's where that came from. That comes in a light and a dark peacock. The light has more of a blue color to it. Um, but yeah, just really unique variations that you can make off of flies. The traditional stuff that we've been tying for years. Now you're able to throw a new wrinkle into it with the different colors and everything. And I still have a bunch of them that I'm working on out there. I got a notebook, this thick of different experiments, both failed and successes. So as I'm able to get caught up on the demand for the stuff that's already out there, it's going to allow me to start moving into some stuff that will be even more unique. So hopefully have some of that to bring to the market here before too long. And
So
then the last thing that
go ahead. Go ahead.
okay, the last thing that I want to touch on before we kind of just go into some more Q&A stuff is the bucktails. Bucktails last year, I was like, all right, well, I got a success on the belly hair. I was able to make those soft and flexible. I was like, well, why can't I do it with the tail? So I started doing it, and there you go. Soft, flexible bucktails. No longer crinkled up and everything. They're able to withstand the temperatures of the dye baths. The pike and muskie guys absolutely go insane for this stuff. This is in 2 grades as well. I have them in 1s and 2s. So what I do is I take and I stand this out right like so, and I'll measure from the hide out. If it's 4 inches and under, it'll be a grade 2. That's mainly your trout flies, some of your bass stuff, your clousers for certain. Anything 4 and over, that goes into a grade 1 category. And then that's where you start getting into like your hollow flies and all of your like your saltwater stuff, your big pike and musky flies. Some of the stuff like Gunner Brammer and those guys that you see them tying with bucktail is just absolutely phenomenal. Like one, they're works of art. Like they're just beautiful flies. And two, like the action that you get out of them in the water, it's just phenomenal. It can't be replicated. I know a couple years back they came out with that synthetic bucktail, and I picked one up just out of curiosity. I put it on the hook. I never even put it in the water. I was like, there's no way, this stuff's garbage. I was like, you just can't replicate a natural material, like deer hair or marabou. They've done pretty good with the dubbing stuff. They've been able to replicate that. Some of the synthetics are pretty good, but I still don't think that you can fully replace a good muskrat, or beaver or anything like that. They've done pretty good.
Peacock,
But-
wood duck.
Right. Yep. But getting in and replacing, like you said, those materials, there's no way to do it with synthetic, at least not now. Ram's wool, they did a decent job on ram's wool. Some of that's synthetic and it's okay, but I mean that how are you going to replicate marabou? And you just can't do it. That stuff just has such motion in the water that it's just almost
Would you
impossible.
want to replicate marabou? Why would you want to use artificial marabou?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not like it's expensive. I mean, come on.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that between deer hair and marabou, those are probably the two materials that I tie with the most, especially in the streamer game. Those are probably the two that I gravitate toward. When I'm either tying flies or trying to design stuff, new concepts. That's typically where I'll go. Those two. I
So-
think I
Go ahead.
got most everything run down. I had if the Wi-Fi was working in the shop, I was going to pull a whole hide out and just kind of go over that. I've got more than enough of them to choose from, but yeah, technology decided not to cooperate tonight, so we'll maybe
Now,
save that.
where do
one
you
for
get most of
when
your hides? You were saying a guy north of you,
Mhm.
butcher north of you. Do you get most of your hides from North Carolina, or do you get them from all over?
So yeah, I get them from all over. My buddy Jack just retired. We were first sergeants together up in Montana. He just retired, and yeah, so he started getting into the tanning game with me, and yeah, so he's doing. I think last year he did like 120. I just picked him up. We did a freight shipment down here, so yeah, I got hides from Montana. I've got North Carolina hides. I'm gonna go home here to Pennsylvania, probably pick up 100, 200, who knows, depending on the quality of them. But yeah, I'm setting up. Christy jokes with me. I'm setting up like a cartel of deer hair.
Right.
But
Is it just whitetail?
for now, yeah, for now, just whitetail. Once I'm able to get back to Montana, probably get into some elk, some mule deer. But whitetail's probably always going to be the focus for me, just because I like the tip length. I like the color break that it has. I'll probably do some elk. Because there is a market for it. It'll be a learning curve for me for sure, but I would definitely like to get into it at some point.
So let's say you're getting a bunch of hides from a butcher, and I mean, what if the guy shoots a deer and then he has to drag it half a mile back to the truck or back to camp or whatever? Does it damage the hair? Does it end up with, do you ever get hides that are all torn up, or is it pretty sturdy as far as?
Yeah, not really. Every once in a while, there'll be like a little section on there to where you can see like some of the tips are busted off. But for the most part, like I really don't have too much of an issue with the hides being beat up or anything. Like I said, every once in a while there'll be a little section. Archery season, believe it or not, tends to be where some more damage happens just because of that broadhead, as it's getting close to the hide, or if it comes along it like laterally, it'll tear a bigger section up than what a rifle will. But
Or a shotgun deer.
yeah, yep, absolutely. Yep.
Does southern deer, like say North Carolina, um, I guess I'm hearing that southern deer are going to have shorter hair, northern deer are going to have longer hair just because of the climate.
So your southern
Thinner
deer,
and thicker too, but what
right?
are the main differences between southern deer and northern deer as far as like this hair?
Yeah, so southern hair, it's definitely going to be a little bit thinner. But I got a couple of hides last year that were, up close to 2 inches on hair
Wow.
length. Yeah. It's just as the season progresses, the window for getting the short fine hair here is a lot longer. Montana, um, you may have a week, 2 week window if you're lucky, from when they transition out of that summer hide into that nice short fine stuff. So you got to be a lot more opportunistic when you're getting your hides. Then Carolina, I think this year I marked it at like 3 weeks where I was able to collect hides, and they still all stayed in that short realm. Yeah, but um, they definitely are a lot thinner on the hides. Like if I have a couple of them out in the shop, but like if you hold them up side to side, the Montana one is probably going to be about like that, but it's still going to be short fine. Um, it just has a little bit more of that spinning hair feel to it when you're putting it on the hook. Like with this stuff here, like for your caddis and all of that, when you want to make that head, um, it's just almost effortless to just set it down on the hook, get your pinch wrap, and then the very next one you just pull down tight on it, and then that hair flares almost perfectly to where sometimes, and you're able to get a lot more strands of this hair into that head than you would from a more northern climate deer. You'll get a lot less strands, but you have more surface area on those as well. So I mean, probably not a huge difference as far as the end result quality.
But what I've always struggled with is when I judge how much hair I need for, say, a muddler minnow for the collar, I
Mhm.
grab a big chunk of deer hair, but I'm mostly focused on the thicker stuff at the base where I'm clipping it off the hide.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and
then
then you get up to
by the time I'm
yeah,
actually just tying in the upper third maybe
right,
of that hair
right.
where it's thinner and so
Yeah, and then it winds up sparse on you.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I always tell everybody. Um, you know, if you think you have enough, grab more because as you're cleaning it out, getting rid of the under fur and all of that. Um, and then like you said, you're looking at the base of what you clipped off and you're like, oh, that's a good amount. Now take more because those tips are gonna wind up getting shorter on you and everything. And yeah, it plays a little optical illusion trick on you.
So you've only been doing this a few years?
Yeah, about three years now. Well, I think this is the fourth year. The first year it was just one hide, um, and just kind of getting an idea of what I was doing. And then the very next year, I was like, okay, well, I know that I can dye these things. I know that I can process them and tan them. The next year, I just jumped all the way into it. I started with like 120 some hides, and then last year I think I did two something, and this year we're up to four, probably going to be close to 500. Yeah.
Do you tan the whole hide at once, or do you cut strips and tan them individually?
Yeah, I tan the whole hide at once. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it's just as far as the process goes, it's a lot easier. And then when it starts coming into the math and then how much chemicals you're using, it's just so much easier to tan them all whole. Yeah. Now there'll be sections, you know, that I'll look at and I know that I'm not going to get any usable hair off of it, you know, like mainly up toward like sometimes they'll leave some of the front legs on. You're not getting any hair out of that. It's just all hawk. So I'll just cut that off and throw it out, and I won't bother tanning it. But yeah, for the most part, it's the entire hide, and it makes it a lot easier too when you're on the fleshing wheel and you're shaving and thinning the hides down, as opposed to trying to run a little 4x8 piece over a fleshing wheel and thin the hide out. It makes it a lot easier for sure.
So that brings up about 12 questions in my head. So if you wouldn't mind, like, you just go get a stack of hides or whatever, and could you just, you don't have to get into like way into the weeds, but the process from taking that hide off the truck to how do you get it to the point where they're into the 4x8 sheets?
Yeah. So there's like I said earlier, I go directly from taking it off of the truck. I roll it up and right to the freezer. And when at least a day, that way, the hide can get frozen. It'll kill the ticks off. Then I'll come out, I'll open it up, and then I'll take it over to the fleshing beam. You want to get all the fats and your viscous membranes and all that stuff off of there. And then
You don't need to release. You don't need to release any, corporate secrets or anything like that. Just,
oh yeah,
just generally.
No. Yeah. But then once it's flesh, you want to salt it. That's going to set your hair. And then from the salt, you go into a pickle where you're using acidity and salt. There's degreasing things that you can do after it's pickled properly. Then you can go into the shaving process where that's the biggest spot for air is in the shaving process. It really is. Like when you're thinning those hides out, it's very easy to just blow a hole in the hide if you don't have your wheel set up right, if your angle's not right. But once you get good with that, it's probably the most enjoyable part of the process for me. Like I enjoy shaving hides now. It used to be a source of frustration, but yeah, there's a lot of value into learning how to properly use the round knife. And then, from there, back to the pickle for a little bit, and then you're into your tanning process. And then after the tanning, you're oiling, and then it's going through the whole breaking process. Once it's broken, you're able to then set it aside until you're ready to dye it. And then once you dye it, there's a little bit more breaking that goes back into it to keep it nice and flexible like this. Yeah, it's a process. It's a process for sure.
So do you dye it in chunks or do you dye it in a whole hide?
Not a whole hide, but sometimes I'll cut a section that's like, 2 foot long by however wide it is, and I'll dye that section. For the most part, I'm kind of torn. Like sometimes I like keeping them in the 4x8s, depending on what color that I'm dyeing them, because sometimes you get better dye penetration when you're working with smaller pieces as opposed to a whole big piece in your dye bath. You may wind up catching a fold that doesn't move freely in the water, and then you have like either a lighter spot or a spot that didn't take dye as well as it should be. So I seem to have better success when they're smaller pieces.
But you can put a bunch of 4x8 sheets in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
like-
Yeah, you can cram a decent amount in there.
Yeah.
And as long as they have freedom of movement, you're typically pretty good. Yep. But yeah, a ton of work in the process, a ton of work. There's man, just looking back from where I was with this process just 3 years ago, like the amount that I've learned, even the amount that I've learned just this year, you know, different things, different processes, different chemicals, so on and so forth. It's just continually trying to improve continually. And I think that comes back to like the fly tire in me, like you were talking earlier, Mike, you're always striving for perfection on that. So I have in my mind what I want as the end product. And, you know, I'm not happy until I get it to that point.
Excellent.
Always room for improvement in everything.